Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So I can't remember what reminded me of my college years, but I got to thinking about some of my professors and how much they truly impacted me, how they helped to shape my perceptions of life, of approaching life. And it's really interesting because I may have mentioned this before, but I initially went to college a little bit unsure of what I wanted to major in, and then I wound up deciding I wanted to teach, and I wanted to teach English Lit because I really I've always enjoyed reading, and I've always enjoyed learning, and just the written word itself is incredibly interesting to me, which is why I'm always looking at definitions and the root formations of a word, the etymology. I just really enjoy that. And so what happened was there were some, without getting into too many details, there were some big events in the country that happened that were very tragic with regards to schools. And so a lot of us that were in a class, a beginning class in college to learn to teach English Lit, a lot of us changed our mind about going into the teaching field at all, because it just felt so unstable, and there were just a lot of concerns. And so I wound up shifting gears and going into an art major. It just, I would walk on the campus past all these students just out in the field, and they would be drawing and painting, and I thought, that looks really peaceful, and I have no idea how you can make money like that, but surely you can. And so that's the route I took, and I actually majored in graphic design for my undergraduate. And then what was interesting, and we're going to talk about it today, is I didn't consciously realize at the time, not really, but I certainly do now, that I was learning more from my teachers about teaching and about life than about art itself. And so what's funny is I did wind up going into teaching, only I taught art instead of English Lit. So that's why my second degree was about art education. So it all came together, and I just want to encourage you, if you're young and you're watching this video, my personal life experience, I could detail it all out for you, and maybe I will one day, but a lot of the things that we go through in life that we feel like maybe we made a mistake, or we went the wrong direction, or maybe there was a short period in our life where we invested time in what we thought we might enjoy as a career, but then we just totally changed gears. Like I was a waitress. I went into banking. I did retail for many years. So many things like that feel irrelevant can wind up, I don't want to make an absolute statement here, but from my experience, they did wind up all coming together in a part of my life where I needed all of those skills, and it helped me to succeed. And so I just want to encourage you that please don't get disheartened if you're still trying to find your way. You certainly don't have to box yourself into any one particular career choice. I just always encourage everyone to expand your mind, and that's going to be a big part of our message today. So I hope that you're doing well today. I hope that you enjoy the message. I hope that it's beneficial to you. I think it will be, if nothing more, entertaining, and I hope that it'll get the wheels turning for all of you, even if you're not young, right, and just starting out and figuring out a career. So all right, let's go ahead and dive in. So, teachers really should be our role models, right? And it's one thing to be considered credible, or even just capable of teaching because you have licensed credentials. It's like, that's one thing, but it's something totally different to actually be good at it and to care about it, right? And so the people that really impacted me in my early college years were were just really good at what they did. I'm going to be honest. And for privacy reasons, I'm not going to go into details about which college and their names and all that, because it is a public platform, and I always encourage you to be careful with that as well, right? But I am going to go ahead and give you some information without giving all the details. So the first teacher that I want to highlight was my woodshop teacher. So when you chose to go down the path to choose a major of an art degree, there were certain classes we had to take. There was no compromise, no choice. And so this was one. And I'm glad I took it. And in the beginning, it's kind of like, well, if I'm doing graphics on a computer, why do I need to do this? But I understand now, because it's learning 3D, how to create something 3D in reality, and then so that you can understand when you're seeing something 3D being created on the computer. So it's really helping to transition. It's like you have that deeper knowledge. And even my graphics teacher, one of them, the most awesome one that impacted me, she came from the era where graphic design was manual, and it was literally some special kind of markers and sponges and things like this, like where you would print out literally the signage you were creating, for example. And so she was able to take that foundational understanding, and I truly believe it helped her to have a deeper understanding of the computer software that would do the same thing. So it's like just going deeper. And when you have someone who's further down the path, an elder, who has been there and done that, and they're able to give you that depth, it's just incredible. I'm also very grateful that I got to work in a dark room and develop my own film. That was so much fun. And so now we have digital cameras, and they were out then too, but my photography teacher actually believed that the quality, and maybe it's true, I'm not sure, but he firmly believed the quality at that time of digital photography photographs was very subpar to actual film. And so but just going through the process and see, there's things too that can't really be duplicated digitally. And so it's kind of like, I can totally understand why people want to hand dye fabrics, or why they want to develop film from scratch in a dark room. It takes time. And the reason why is there's parts of that process that are enjoyable. You're immersed in the experience. It's not quick and immediate. There's no immediate satisfaction. So in a way, it's safer and healthier that way, because you're not subjecting yourself to an experience where you might become like unconsciously addicted to the immediacy of the digital age. And so there's just something very beautiful about immersing yourself in those details. It's almost like a meditative practice in itself, and I'm very thankful that I had that experience. And it also wound up helping me when I went back for my second degree, and I learned how to teach art, because I taught little children, and they are hands-on. That's where it starts. So it wound up benefiting me in that regard too, right? I wound up doing marketing for a bank and other businesses, and understanding just so many levels of how creativity can be used to connect with people on a heart level, and how that is beneficial for a company. And in turn for all those employed by the company. So it's, again, I just encourage you to keep your mind expanded, and we're going to talk about that. So yeah, it's like I said, it's one thing to be credible as a teacher just because you have the license and you went through and did the training, but it's another to be a good teacher. So this workshop teacher, he was just incredible. He had all these saws in his room, and this huge sander, and like the whole side of the building was glass, and he was talking about things that he had experienced himself, and how he had seen students who were careless and using the sander, and how it threw these huge planks of wood, through the glass, and how dangerous they can be. So, the first step for him was making sure we all had a healthy fear. And we're going to talk about that too, a healthy fear which really translates to respect for the equipment, because it could kill you. It could literally kill you. So, but the first few projects that he had us do, it was all the developmental stage. It was sketching out our plans for creating these 3D pieces, art pieces in wood. And so we all, you know, he gave us the instructions, very detailed. We all went home, we worked on it, we come back, and he just shredded every one of us. It was like C and worse. And it was a shock to all of us, like, really? We really thought we did our best. We thought we did our best, right? So at the time we're like, we did our best. And it was a process. And to be honest with you, I don't remember the details, but it was a process where I just remember sitting through some classes that were more like lectures, and it was like it was like psychological training, but we didn't know that. We didn't identify it as that. But he was working on our minds. He was working to expand our minds on possibilities versus limitations. It was beautiful. It was so beautiful. So he really pushed us. And so the biggest lesson for all of us in that class was, don't think of the limitations when creating something, okay? Just create it in your mind, and then you can find a way to make it happen. And that's what we did. So he sent us back. He said, do it over. Do it over. And he said, I don't even want you to consider, like, is this even possible with the equipment? Can we actually create this? He said, totally scratch that. During the creation phase, right, in your mind. So that's what we did. We all went back and we worked very hard on, I'm sorry, I'm seeing people all around my Jeep. I want to make sure. I always got to keep your eyes open, you know what I mean? Okay, so I think I'm good. So, yes, it was all about don't impose restrictions during the creation phase, which is just like that book I mentioned to you all, Becoming a Writer by Dorothea Brande, I think it was Brande, B-R-A-N-D-E, I think. Awesome book from years ago when I bought it. But she's essentially talking about when you write as an author, it's the same process. Don't start with limitations. Don't edit along the way as you're creating. That's for later. That's why editing is a separate stage, because it can inhibit the creativity. It's almost like you don't know what's possible until you try. And so he absolutely proved that to us through this class. It was beautiful. And so he just sent us back and said, start over, draw again, and don't even think of the limitations. And we did. And I'm telling you, it was incredible to see at the end of that class what we made. I don't even know how we did it. Still, looking back, it's like, how did we even do that? There were people who created these wooden, we were supposed to make a container, okay? A container. So there had to be a lid and an opening of some kind. But there were people that made like this wooden ball that had spikes all around, and just, maybe I'll share mine with you one day. I still have mine. But it was incredible, and he made it happen. He showed us how to make it happen. So just a beautiful takeaway. Truthfully, the whole class was like 90% or more was in tears at the last presentation of our projects. It was just incredible to see the transformation, not in so much creativity, but in the minds of his students. It was beautiful. He was an awesome teacher. So I just encourage you to be a visionary. That's what he taught us to do, how to truly be a visionary. So let's break that term apart. All right, if you're a visionary, you're able to see visions. And what's interesting, I'll look this term up in the online etymology dictionary, okay? So able to see visions. It's also associated with being impractical. How about that? I don't know about you, but this just reeks of gaslighting to me. You know, all these people out here in the world on the small scale in your life and on the large scale that are telling you, no, that's not possible, or that's not true, or right. You know what I mean? Impractical. One who indulges in impractical fantasies. Kind of ironic when I've had very large companies and even the school system I worked for, who encouraged you to be a visionary. Really? I don't think a successful company or a government-run agency who has the goal of succeeding is going to encourage their staff to engage in impractical fantasies. Do you? So being a visionary is incredible. And I just want to use this as a point to mention myth, which I enjoy very much. I've shared with you all, some books about that. And, there's a lot of debate over myth, if it's truly fantasy, or if it's actually history, documented history in part or in whole. So, even if you, as a Christian, if you read the Bible, does it not read like fantasy? So there's a lot of debate there over whether it's just spiritual, metaphor in physical stories of like in physical form, or, was it all physical, or was it both? I always like to keep my mind expanded, and I'm getting ahead of myself. I won't go any further in my thought there because I'm going to bring it up later. But yeah, there's a lot of debate over myth too. I just encourage you to sit with things, concepts like this, and determine how you feel about it. So let's break it down. Let's break down that term visionary. Vision is the act of seeing. Ary, A-R-Y, is the man engaged in, or of, or belonging to. So like the man engaged in seeing, or the woman engaged in seeing, right? So let's take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14, which says, the natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him, and he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. Spiritually discerned. When you think about things like myth and fantasies, it's related to what they call the supernatural. The supernatural. Keep that in mind with that verse I just read. I'm going to read it again. The natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him. Like impractical and everything. For he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. So I want to ask you a question to sit with and maybe journal on. How do you determine fact? I've had to ask myself this too. That's why I'm sharing it with you. Okay? Because this teacher I was telling you about, he taught us to let go of impossible. Okay? And I feel like a lot of times we never move forward with an idea due to fear of failure. I think there's a saying, failure killed more ideas than doubt. I had it backwards. Doubt killed more ideas than failure ever did. So that fear of failure is a blockage, a big blockage. Okay, so what I'm learning is fear is based on or rooted in ignorance. That's essentially a big part of that lesson I just shared with you all, right? So take a look at this. Proverbs chapter 9 verse 10 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's the New International Version. Now the New Living Translation says, fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. And I feel like you could look at fear in this aspect as healthy respect for God, because he can do anything. He made us. He can do away with us. But so it goes on to say in this verse, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. I feel like this is closely tied into that other verse I shared, 1 Corinthians 2:14. So now we have Mark chapter 9 verse 19. It says, Jesus says, "O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you?" And then just to make sure he hits it home, he says, "How long shall I suffer you?" I love it. He says, "Bring him to me." So the context with this verse is there was a boy, I'm not sure of his age, but it was a young boy that they said had a demonic spirit. I think he was described as being dumb and deaf in the Bible, and I don't think this was meant derogatory, in a derogatory manner. I just want to say this. I'm sure if you're watching my channel, you're not going to even take it that way. I'm just mostly talking for any random person that might be easily triggered and come across my channel. So I don't think it was meant that way, right? in a derogatory manner, but he's this child is has an issue. Okay, so they bring him to Jesus. Now in verse 22, they tell Jesus, they say, if you can't do anything, just please have compassion on us and just help us. And he's like, if I can't do anything, are you serious? That he doesn't say that, but he says, if you can believe that all things are possible, if you can believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. You have to have faith. It's not going to happen, whatever it is, if you don't have faith. That comes first. That's the planning stage. That's the drawing out stage. It starts here, okay? So fear definitely seems synonymous with ignorance. Matthew chapter 13, verses 9 through 16, I encourage you to read this, okay? Because it's talking about the secrets of the kingdom of heaven and how they're meant for some and not for others. I'm going to tell you again, Matthew chapter 13, verses 9 through 16. So it explains why the secrets of the kingdom of heaven are in parables. They're in parables for a reason. First of all, you got to want it, which means you got to work for it. Faith without action is dead. So you got to want it bad enough to work for it, right? So it also describes how the people who aren't going to receive those secrets, they're not going to do so because it says their hearts have become calloused, and it references understanding with the heart, not just the literal, material, physical, limited human mind, but the heart. There's another deeper level of understanding. So I just want to encourage you, don't let calloused people that you may have spent some time with destroy your ability to see and to hear. You got to have eyes to see and ears to hear, okay? That's a big part of creation, of possibilities. Don't carry on and go forward with these limitations. Because toxic, controlling people, they try to place this on you. They try to place you in this mental prison of limitations. Why? So they can be the ones to tell you what's what, to tell you what's fact, and not have you think for yourself. All right, which is a great lead-in to this other teacher that she was awesome, and she had a big impact on me and others. She was my drawing teacher, and I'll share with you, her name was Jaydreamerz. She's very funny, and I'm going to share some stories about that in a minute, but you know, she had us sketching. We had these big notepads. They were, you know, like huge, and we'd take them to class, and we'd have to lug so much to class, but it was totally worth it, you know, so much fun. But we'd sit in class with charcoal. We would draw with charcoal. It's very forgiving. You can blend it, and it's just, it gives you more possibilities with regards to what you're creating in a drawing. You know, it's really cool, really fun to work with. But she had us look at a lot of what they call still lifes in class, where she would set up this little staging area with different objects to draw, and try to create that as much, make it look like real life on your paper. And the hardest thing for me was fabric. It just drove me crazy. She would drape fabric, and it would have these folds, you know, and these shadows, and the light would hit it, and it was just highlights and shadows as you know, these folds were created from her draping this down, and it blew my mind. It's like I could see it, but for some reason I just couldn't put it on the paper. It was a big challenge. And so, yeah. But then what was funny is she would have people come in and sit and model for us, and we would draw human anatomy. And so it was the same kind of thing. It's this dance, this play with light and dark, with the musculature and the curves of the model. It was really interesting, and for whatever reason that just came more natural to me. And she part of what made her a wonderful teacher is she would tell you the hard truths. She would give you constructive criticism, because you know full well if you can't do something. But then she would also acknowledge, your strengths, because we're all different. And I feel like, God created us that way on purpose. And that's why when you are able to not have a calloused heart, or not catch that from someone who does, when you're able to retain this light inside of you and love, then you're able to work together with other people and put your strengths together to accomplish more in life. It's a beautiful thing. So she would compliment you on what you were good at and point out and validate your strengths. And that's a beautiful example of a great relationship dynamic, where you do have iron sharpening iron. You're able to tell one another hard truths, but it's told in love. It's done in love because you've reached that level of maturity. You know what I mean? And you've worked to get there. But you also can validate one another's strengths. You don't feel challenged, and because you don't have a competitive spirit like a narcissistic type person. There's none of that there. There's no competition in love. So, and then to the funny stuff on her. So, my recent video was about packing light, here and here. So she taught us to pack light for real. It's funny how these stories stick with you. And her example was, when you're traveling, just take 1 or 2 pairs of underwear. It's all you need. It's all you need. You can always hand wash it in the sink. And so she was really a hoot. But she truly was more impactful as a living example of following your own guiding light than any of her drawing lessons. And I'm going to give you some more examples on her, okay? It's kind of like she broke all the rules. She invited all of her students to her house as an outing, part of an outing when we would go and visit local galleries and museums that were near to her residence. And we all got to go in and see her art in her beautiful house. But her house was a wreck. She had dishes piled up like she hadn't touched the sink in at least 4 or 5 weeks. And so that's a common rule that a lot of us tend to live by, making sure your house is just so and put in order before you have guests over. And she didn't worry about that. And you know what? We still enjoyed being there. And it's almost like it was just this level of transparency with her. Like, look, I'm not perfect. And look, I have other priorities. And they actually turned out to benefit others. The time she was spending on us to help refine us. It was beautiful. She had multiple paintings going at once. She took us in her basement where she had all these paintings up on the wall, and it was kind of like, it's a standard a lot of times for an artist to just focus on one painting and get it done. And that's not a bad thing, but she kind of just went outside. She colored outside the lines, and she had all these different paintings, and she would just tweak them over and over and over, until it felt right. Again, seeing with the heart, understanding with the heart, like that Bible verse, until it felt right. So it's this understanding, getting to see this physical representation of this deeper mental and spiritual ability to be able to trust your intuition. And so she was very successful at her art. It was beautiful. And her walls were covered in paintings. I don't think there was more than about a 5 square inch space that didn't have a painting. And she was actually the one that introduced me to the power of myth. A lot of her paintings included elements from Greek mythology. It was really cool. In short, I adored her. Can you tell? So the thing is, when you get involved with a controller, you experience the exact opposite of the freedom that Adrienne lived. The house is sterile a lot of times. They want you to be sterile too, which is confusing, because you don't realize that your sole purpose is to be the mask for the narcissist's double life. And I know that narcissism can and deceitful people and all their tactics can manifest in different ways, but today I'm speaking from experience here. So I want to share with you too there's a movie that I love. It's got Queen Latifah in it. It's actually called Last Holiday. It's got LL Cool J too, and it's just a great movie. But it's yeah, Last Holiday. Her name and her character's name is Georgia Bird, and I would say 3/4 into the movie, she's looking at herself in the mirror. She's all dressed up, and she's taken herself on a vacation, this beautiful place, and she's looking at herself in the mirror, and she's facing her own impending death, or so she thinks in the movie, and she says, "I lived my whole life in a box. I don't want to be buried in one." And that really, really stuck with me. It's been years since I've seen the movie. I think I'm actually pulling together 2 scenes. There was a scene where she was looking in the mirror at herself, and she was saying how proud she was to herself, of herself. And that's important. It doesn't make you crazy to affirm how far you've come. I encourage you to do that as well. Use your creative license there too. Don't impose limitations on yourself in that manner. It's okay to acknowledge how far you've come, even if it means looking at yourself and speaking encouraging things as you do what they call reparenting, right? I think it was actually I'm pulling that statement about living her whole life in a box from a letter that she had written, and there was somebody else reading it. But it's a great movie. I just encourage you. It's all about breaking free, right? So, yeah, when we're talking about freedom, freedom truly isn't free. If we think about the price paid both by Jesus and even our military, we understand freedom is precious. It's precious. And we weren't meant to live in fear, scared. That's not, I don't believe, what God meant and intended for our lives, okay? We weren't meant to subdue our potential for a beautiful life to be used by another. So I hope today that you choose faith in the impossible and freedom to define your own edges. That was supposed to be a very impactful statement at the end of my video, and I just realized I didn't give you the part that goes with that, so I'll give it to you now. So in drawing out the fabric, and I was telling you how difficult it was for me to make it look real. It was the part where the edges, where you're defining the edges of the folds with regards to light and dark. So you could take that, and I encourage you maybe to do this as well with journaling, a journaling prompt maybe, to figure out, there is this dance of light and dark in our reality too. It's what you might call the spiritual battle. And so learning where our edges are, or our boundaries are, is crucial. So in defining our own edges, when another person defines our edges, it's limiting, right? Because that's not what they're supposed to do. When we define our edges, it's safeguarding our freedom. It's this beautiful paradox, So I hope, again, this has been encouraging. I hope you enjoyed the message, and mostly I hope it got the wheels turning for you. I thank you for coming along to hear the message, and I hope that you have a beautiful day. I'll see you again very soon.